What I want to go through today is just a quick update of where we're at in the harmonization process. We're actually not very far along, considering that this all happens in about 6 weeks. The transitional rules that we're in right now, we're May 19th, and we'll talk about where you're taking payments today for something you're going to do in July or later, and how that impacts your organization. Recaptured ITCs for large businesses over 10 million, and we'll go into what that is. The philosophy behind it has a HST bent on it. A little bit on self-assessments, and a little bit on what we need to do to get through the next 6 weeks and into the HST zone. And then a non-HST thing is just an FYI that July 1st, even though it's HST Day, is also from the CRA side of things, electronic filing day as well. So no longer paper returns your business over $1.5 million. Just a bit of background. I started with the good old CRA in January 1991 when GST was brought in. We got rid of this FST that no one really knew about. It was all embedded in the manufactured goods, moved into a value-added tax called this GST. I spent about 6 or 7 years there, and then across the street to KPMG. I work in a number of industry sectors, including the retail and hospitality industry. I work in First Nations groups, large commercial organizations based in Edmonton. Obviously, we do a lot of oil and gas servicing work. That's not necessarily the exploration, that's Calgary. Public sector bodies, universities, hospitals, and a bit in the financial institution sector as well. So broad range of experience. Hopefully I can bring that into some of this at times boring technical material, but here we go. This is what Canada is going to look like on July 1st. If you're living in Alberta or way up north in those territories, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, Yukon, you're only paying a 5% GST. Anywhere else in Canada, you're either paying an HST or a combined GST and PST. Quebec is a little bit of an anomaly. They have a value-added tax that's not harmonized. So it's not a provincial sales tax like you know of and see in British Columbia. Their rules are almost identical to the GST rules, and in fact, closer to the BC HST rules, but they didn't harmonize their administration. They still have provincial auditors. They still have a provincial ministry that handles the Quebec sales tax. If I'm a business here in BC and I set up a shop in Quebec, I'm not automatically registered for their tax. I have to do a separate process, a separate return. For British Columbia, Ontario, and the 3 maritime provinces that are harmonized, they are harmonized fully. What that means is on July 1st, you don't have to phone up the government and say, I need to get registered. You're registered today because you're registered for GST. If you're collecting GST today and you decided to sell my computer and ship it to Halifax, well, you're going to have to charge HST whether you realize it or not. You're already registered for HST, and that in fact is what's going to happen here in British Columbia. So this is kind of where we're at landscape-wise of things that we've seen or has been released by the 3 governments, Ontario, British Columbia, and the federal government. We're dealing, the information that we're presenting today is based on a number of notices and bulletins. We don't have a lot of legislation that's been tabled. Off the top of my head, the legislation that has been tabled provincially is stuff like transfer of human resources from the province to the feds, a comprehensive integrated taxation agreement that allows for the harmonization. But the actual HST amendments, other than some definitions, have not been tabled. They've got to get tabled soon with the federal government, the Department of Finance. So some of the notices we have, revised place of supply rules. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail today on that, given the crowd. We have a restaurant in BC or a hotel in BC. Place of supply is going to be BC. If we have questions of it afterwards, I have probably 5 or 6 slides at the end of the presentation that if you want, we can cover over that material. Will the governments pay the HST? When you have a hotel stay with a provincial government employee today, they will not pay you the GST. As of July 1st, the provincial government is going to pay the HST. Something to be aware of, because the particular employee you're dealing with may not be aware of it. Public service bodies, those are your universities, hospitals, schools, they will get a rebate, and we won't go into the detail of that, but the philosophy of them getting a rebate is they're funded by government, and presently they pay PST on directly or indirectly, that's embedded in their cost structure. So as a percentage of their costs, they have PST. Moving into an HST where they're going to pay substantially more tax, given their fixed means of income being a government grant, there's a rebate mechanism that brings them back to where they were under the PST system. So that's why there's rebates in place. So just further on the update, Bill C-62 reached Royal Assent in December 15th, I believe. I can't read my screen and this is by charts. If I mess up, it's just I'm blind, it's all right. That particular bill, again, just had some definitions in it. Didn't have place of supply rules, didn't have transitional rules. All it has is that the harmonized provinces will include BC, Ontario, and a few other housekeeping things. So like I say, we're waiting for the actual legislation that incorporates all of the notices that we have so far, plus some additional stuff that we're waiting for. So the yellow part of that slide are example of a number of notices that we have. We'll get into some of the details on those as we move further along. The key thing to remember, and the questions I get on a day-to-day basis, is when people think of the HST, they're thinking of the provincial sales tax. So they're using a PST mindset and trying to apply it to the HST. So for example, I'm a restaurant here in British Columbia, and I bought equipment in Calgary. I went and picked it up, I shipped it back in here. I have to self-assess PST. So I get a question, do I have to self-assess the HST? And the answer when we get to that is no. Think of it as a GST. HST, you're going to pay it. As a business, you're going to claim it back. So if you're going to claim it back, you're not going to have to self-assess. So those are the kind of questions that we're dealing with. 99% of whatever is taxable for GST follows the exact same rules for HST. So if you have a question on, well, I didn't charge PST on this, do I have to charge HST? Ask yourself, am I charging GST on this currently? The answer is yes, charge the HST. Safe assumption. As I mentioned already, the provinces will be paying the HST effective July 1. If you have and this was some other service industries that we've dealt with, they may have a contract, an ongoing service contract with the province that was signed in 2005, for instance, and it's got a fixed price in it. There's a mention that they're the province, they don't pay GST, and we're advising them that to send out a letter of intent saying, further to the July 1st harmonization, we understand the province will be paying HST. This letter is just a letter of intent to let you know that our price is still the same, but we will be charging you an additional 12% tax that you're required to pay. All it's doing is protecting your revenue source, and the province doesn't come back and say, oh no, this agreement was fixed in price and silent on tax, therefore it's HST included. You want to try to nip that in the bud, if you will, and just say, no, the price is this, we're going to charge HST over and above it, so you're protecting your revenue source. The BC carbon tax on fuel is remaining in effect, and we get into a slide or two later. We look at point of sale rebates. BC has a little bit of a unique situation compared to Ontario and the other Atlantic harmonized provinces in terms of point of sale rebates. The parking tax will remain in effect.